We've all seen the LinkedIn post. Every company should be a media company. And I think it looks different for everyone. But I think one of the most amazing parts is that
in today's episode, we have our good friend Carly Baker. She used to be the liaison between us and the HubSpot Podcast Network, but now she's actually working with HubSpot Originals.
It's like business crack.
it's not enough just to have Seth Godin on your show when Seth Godin has been on 1,000 other shows, right?
Yeah. As she came to Content is Profit to share with you all the growth strategies that they're using nowadays to grow their own personal show.
A really big focus of mine is developing a really strong earned strategy. How can we make this a partnership so that we can work together to amplify this content?
You have a massive value today if you look at the things that you are already doing.
I really think that it's like the new age of specialized and niche creators.
Make sure you get pen and paper because we're diving deep. Let's go.
We've got some
Hey,
fresh new
I'm
young
Luis.
talent
And
doing some
I'm
things that I
Luis.
know you haven't
And you're
heard
listening to the
before.
Content is Profit podcast. Guys, welcome back to Content is Profit. Today, I'm excited because, this person has been on the show before. Every time she comes, it's pure golden boulders everywhere. We have to wear our helmets, dropping everywhere.
We need helmets. It's still episode 500. We've talked about the helmets. We need to bring them here.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm excited for today's guest.
Yes.
She's not like a regular. She has a, how do you call it when like a DJ goes to the same club every single time? Residency. She has residency in Content is Profit. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, with that said, let's formally start the show. Or that's it?
That's it. That's the intro. Welcome, Carly. Let's go.
There we go. That's how we do things here. We move things forward.
That's right. So, Carly, right before we jump in here, first of all, Happy New Year, Merry Christmas, all the holidays to you, and your family, your loved ones. But right before we started recording, you were sharing an update on your career life with HubSpot. Why don't you share with everybody? We interrupted you. We're like, stop, don't say anything else. We want to share with the world. Why don't you share on what you're working
real quick,
on?
for those that don't know Carly has been kind of like our main person with the network, with HubSpot Network, which has changed our lives and the podcast progress, and with their resources, their network, everything in between. And, we're like, Carly, you need to come and share what's happening on the other side, because every single person that is involved with the podcast and our podcast asks us questions like, how is it on that side? What are you guys doing? What are the trends? What's happening? So that's a quick background. But anyways, all right, Carly, big update on your side, right?
Yes, big update on my side. So we at the network have sort of two parts of the network. We have our sort of external partnerships where we work with folks like you two, lovely people. And then we also have our own shows that are produced internally at HubSpot. And I'm really excited to share with both of you and with your audience that I'm now actually going to be working on listener acquisition and audience growth for our HubSpot Originals. So just to give you a lowdown of what shows those are, of course, most people I think have heard of My First Million. We have Marketing Against the Grain, which features our CMO. We have The Science of Scaling, which is a new sales show that we have going. We have Another Bite, which is a hilarious Shark Tank rewatch show for any Shark Tank fans out there. Definitely recommend. And of course, we have the Hustle Daily Show. So really excited to just go all in this year on, building an infrastructure not only for our paid tactics, but of course for our owned and earned media strategies as well. So super excited.
That's so cool. Well, congrats on that job. And for anybody listening, go check out those shows. It's like business crack. It's like as soon as you start listening to those shows, you're going to be like, I want more. And then you'll implement and you're going to have a great success.
And I think there's a huge lesson in here as well, which is, we've talked about this for a lot of time.
A lot of
time. Wow. I'm like, I haven't said many words today, so, I'm warming up on my English right now. But, Gary Vee actually mentioned this a long time. It's like every company is going to be in part two companies, the business that they're in and then a media company. And now you see it in HubSpot, right? A huge, billion-dollar company. Now they're developing their own original shows. And sure, they started by, creating their network and bringing creators in together, but now they see the value on creating their own thing. And I think that's I mean, it's a message for the smaller companies as well. What are you doing to have the media side on your company? What are you doing to express your thought leadership within your business and connect with other people out there?
Yeah, Carly, that's an idea that we've obviously like continued to share with everybody, right? And for maybe a smaller creator or a smaller business owner, it can be overwhelming to be like, what? I'm like barely making it here, trying to build like my company. Are you telling me that I need like a media side? Can I just like go hire an agency? So why don't you I mean, you're on the inside, right, in this amazing thing. And why should we be approaching as in 2024 as, hey, I need my internal media side. I need to control my message. Can you share a little bit more of that strategic side?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we've all seen the LinkedIn posts. Every company should be a media company, and I think it looks different for everyone. But I think one of the most amazing parts is that of having sort of that media arm is that you're positioning the value of whether of your goods or services or whatever it may be in a unique way to the market that you wouldn't have a chance to sort of talk about or position in any other way. And so what I love is that while there's a definitely on the podcast side, a explosion of what we would think of or call like branded podcasts, but they're not just focusing on here's, I'm a lawn care company. Here's the services that we do. Instead, they're taking different angles of saying like, here's the history of lawn care. Here's the history of lawnmowers. Like, why is this a thing? Right. So taking different angles of positioning themselves in market, but also being more of like leaning more, I think, into the educational space and kind of co-branding, even though it is a branded podcast, but kind of co-branding that content and tying the value of your business into it and using that as a way to gain customers. I think every business hopefully has some kind of marketing going on, some kind of media going on. And I think it's really important as search becomes more complicated in the land of AI and Google changes and all of those things. It really is important to have sort of that media arm just to be able to expand and to have authority in the space.
Yeah, absolutely. 2 points. One, you cannot like read my notes, and we haven't shared. I'm gonna say we haven't shared these.
Are you hacking Fonzie's Notion?
I was literally gonna address today that one of the things that I see coming up here in this upcoming year is shows and series, not just posting, but higher entertainment value, which is kind of like what you were talking about, right? Like, what is that angle that we're gonna do? The other thing is we just had a client here at the studio that they were talking on how they're running this campaign for one of their clients, but it's difficult to get her to do certain things. And also that a lot of that client's clients are coming through, food when she mainly wants to sell them kind of like health and wellness services. And it reminded me of, give them what they want, sell them what they need. And I think that is in part the angle that you want to take with media, especially in 2024, right? What is a show? What is some sort of series that you can create, right? That is high on entertainment value, sure, high on education as well, but at the same time, it's going to serve to pretty much feed that need of want that your client might have, right? It's like, all right, I want to be entertained and I want to learn a little bit about business. And then on the other side, then you're like, hey, and guess what? Now that you're learning about this and we know you are the right audience, we have this software on the back end, right, aka HubSpot, for you to build your own business. Or on our case, you're listening to Content Profit, you're having a blast, you're learning about all these strategies. Well, guess what? If you are in need of a team to, produce this stuff for you, we're here for you. So I think that's definitely the way things are going to go in 2024. More shows, more series-based content.
I've seen a trend, Carly, right? Like with, you see like micro content, for example, right? And then you have these creators that create mainly entertaining side of things. And then you see the company kind of partnering with them, be like, hey, you guys have creative freedom, either 10% creative freedom or 100% creative freedom, right? And there's something in between. And then they collaborate, right? And then it evolves into, hey, can we recruit, our, chief creator officer type of deal where we can, start that arm. I've seen that a lot with like short form, right? Because maybe there are tidbits, right? People like go into like specifically vertical content. But that trend is moving faster to long form, right? And maybe, right, it hasn't moved that fast before because maybe it was a little bit more of an investment when it comes to developing these properties, right? Like we had a conversation with somebody that's pitching a show to Amazon to go and film this like soccer environments with fans and different things. And one of the things that we're going to be helping them do is, can we create a sister or brother like podcast show that goes with that as part of like the value add to it? So if these companies now develop these arms, their media side, they can also explore partnership with somebody else by adding value with their media arm, right? Which is a lot of, Gary Vee is doing it, what you guys are doing with HubSpot. Yeah. So I think it's super interesting, that trend. And the trend within the content, you see a lot of like, what's the closest to what we know, which is like the education of like, or explaining the service, for example. But now it's evolving to like, how can we do entertainment with the value that we add? And I think that's a very interesting challenge for different companies, and it will look very different to every single person.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like the word of the year for creators or for the creator economy is definitely like edutainment, which is like the perfect mix of like educational content that's like very entertaining. It's not leaning so hard one way or so hard the other way. It's kind of you're hitting both of those sides, and that's kind of the content that we've seen last year and sort of starting into this year that's getting the most traction and is having the most growth. And I think that's really going to be the future. I think there are definitely some segments of the industry that are purely becoming the reality TV of podcasting, and those will always be on the entertainment side, and they serve a very specific purpose. And like personally, I of course like do listen to some of that content, but I'm not going to that content to learn. Like I'm going to giggle and like learn about whatever's going on in Real Housewives, right? And so there's a very specific place and audience for that. But I think when we think about sort of the business space, it's not enough just to have someone on to share their story and then that to be it, right? Because the way that the industry has grown, there's so much of that content. And so folks that are having great success in differentiating themselves are really leaning more into that educational or edutainment sort of sphere of content and are going full steam ahead on that. Yeah,
the Venezuelan is rubbing off of you. I can tell, messing up some English words in there. I love it. Carly, I'm curious. All right, you're in this new role, in this new kind of like arm that HubSpot has, and I think you mentioned being in the growth marketing part of it. I'm curious, what are some of the initiatives that you guys are doing in there? Definitely somebody that is trying to grow a podcast. I think there's probably parallels that we can learn, that we can potentially implement as well. So what are some of the things that you guys are trying out?
Yeah, absolutely. So, we're still having our paid is still definitely a part of the mix, and that looks different depending on sort of what shows we have. But I think we're also a really big focus of mine is developing a really strong earned strategy. And I think one of the strongest pillars of that, because many of our shows feature guests, is figuring out how to facilitate more one-on-one partnerships with people that come on our shows, right? And so when we think about pitching guests, we go to someone and we say, we would love to have you on our show. Here's our media kit. Like here is our direct value proposition. Here is what you will get for being a guest on our show. How can we make this a partnership so that we can work together to amplify this content? I think one of the biggest challenges that people have with shows that have guests is you have a guest come on, they're great, it's a great episode, you do all of this promotion, you're sharing on socials, maybe you put some paid behind it, and then you get crickets on the other end. The person never shares the episode, you have this amazing guest, and it's like, we're now at a point where, and I think we talked about this a little bit last time, where it's not enough just to have Seth Godin on your show when Seth Godin has been on 1,000 other shows, right? You have to think about it more as a holistic partnership of here's what we're bringing to the table. Here's the opportunity. What are you going to bring to the table to make sure that, there's value, an equal value exchange from the guest to the show, right? And so figuring out what that looks like. And I think there's no one size fits all answer. For some people, it's taking the episode that we've recorded on our show and maybe doing a feed drop and dropping that in the other person's feed. Maybe it's doing like collaborating on social content and sharing that. It could be a one-to-one guest swap where we have you on and they have you, and you know, they host us. So thinking about ways to make it as easy as possible where there's more of an equal value share, I think is a really big priority for us. And then of course also just diving deeper into leveraging, of course, HubSpot's channels. We have really massive reach, and you know, figuring out how to best capitalize on that for growth and really leaning into the audiences that we have on individual platforms and using that as an engine to grow the audiences that we have and are developing, you know, on the audio side. We're also, HubSpot as a company is very bullish on YouTube, and we have a YouTube network, and we're now sort of following the suit of many others, you two included, of, you know, doing and developing a video strategy for our podcast. So that's definitely a really big priority for us too. But what's really exciting is that on this side, you know, I get to work with the editorial teams. I get to work with the production teams. It's like the way that we work together is a partner of ours said it's like passing the baton. And so it's a very collaborative process in terms of how we think about growth and how we capitalize on trends and use that. We just, on the Hustle Daily Show, we're experimenting more on the YouTube side. And we just shared a story about Stanley Cups, which of course have like been more or less viral for the last year, but just had this massive part in the news about, you know, people fighting over Stanley Cups in Target for their Starbucks collab. So trying really hard to find a balance between how much do we want our content to be based on what's going on right now and how much do we want it to be evergreen and more long form, and figuring out like a good mix of keeping audiences interested in stories that we're telling of all kinds, right? And kind of being able to thread the needle and keep people engaged.
Yeah. Wow. What an answer. There's a lot to break down in here. I absolutely love it. I think one that obviously for the people that are trying to grow a podcast, that might be the most interesting one, is definitely that one-on-one partnership. And I love how you express that, right? When you reach out, hey, here is our value proposition. How can we work together to amplify the effect of this? I think there's a mindset, and there's nothing wrong with this. I'm a believer of this, actually, that it's like give, right? And especially, I think in marketing, in the direct response marketing world, that has been made very popular. It's like, just give everything for free, you know, publish here, publish there. And then eventually, like, you know, people are going to get interested and they're going to come in, whatever. So I think that mindset has dripped a little bit into the podcasting world in the terms of have a guest, you know, you're giving them by having them on your platform, by promoting and all that. So it's like, look, the fact that you already have them on your platform pretty much gives you permission to ask as well for their help. It's on their best interest to promote this podcast episode. So why don't you try to reach a partnership? I think that right there, that moment of people transitioning from like, I'm just going to have this guest to, I'm going to have a partner that I'm going to record an episode with. I think that transition is a little bit tough for people. I'm not sure if it's, you know, fear of rejection or what, but you coming in with a proposal of like, hey, look, we're going to record this episode and then we're going to produce a high quality trailer for the show that is going to highlight you. You know, it's going to have X amount of hooks to get people interested. All we're asking for is for you to post it on social media. You know, if, you know, can we run ads on your profile as well? We'll fund the ads. You don't have to pay anything, but can we run them from your account? I think that's a very important conversation, very low risk and very low cost, effective, you know, marketing growth campaign that people can start doing literally on their next interview.
I think it's hard too. It requires it requires so much legwork. Number one, you have to have like assets ready. Yep. You have to have copy ready. Like if you're the person that is inviting someone on, you really are sort of in the driver's seat in setting expectations in that experience. So you need to do as much as possible to make it as easy as possible for them to partner with you, right? You have to have that copy ready. You have to have the assets ready. You have to say, here's when we're going to post. Can we collaborate with your account and both post it? Like these types of things, right? It takes a lot more of an infrastructure that you have to set up and a lot more back and forth and those types of things. And so I think many people don't have the bandwidth or the ability to set it up that way. And then because they're not setting those expectations and they're not making it easy, then when the guest doesn't share, it's like, well, why didn't they share? And so there's a little bit of responsibility, I think, that falls onto that party, right?
100%.
But I also think setting expectations is really important. And I think a lot of people are afraid of being hard on boundaries of if you come on the show, like we have an expectation that you will partner with us to do one of these list items, right? And they're worried that people will say no because of that. And sure, some people will say no, but based on people that I know that do this either in the network or other folks that I know, like there's actually a very small percentage of people that say no. And when you think about it, it's like, would I even want to have that person on if they don't even want to share this amazing interview that I'm doing with them on their behalf, right? Yeah. And if they don't want to share, it's like, is that even a valuable person or someone that you would want to have on and do that? So I think that's a part of it too.
This is amazing. And I would love to remove some of the friction too, right? Because like you mentioned, there's some technical things, right? For example, like running the ads in somebody else's account, or like running ads specifically for podcasts, sharing the ad budget, for example, right? Like these are very technical things that maybe not everybody has access to, but you know, we've talked about collaborating within the same platform. You know, a podcast listener is a podcast listener. A YouTube consumer, it is a YouTube consumer. So I think like that could be step number one for a lot of people that might not have the technical aspect of like, hey, can we run ads? Or, hey, can we create micro content, right, out of this episode? It might be a time constraint. It might be a team constraint. Who knows? But think about and I'm talking to the people that might not have those resources right now. It's like, think about like, what are the ways that we can collaborate within the same platform? Or if you have access to like a social media account with us, Instagram or TikTok. I remember there was a stage in our show that we decided to do, we call them content bites, and it was like a mini interview inside of Instagram Live. And we would just go and collaborate inside of Instagram. Their audience was exposed to it. Our audience was exposed to them. And then we would do the show and then we'll cross promote, right? So what are the elements that you already have in place, right? If you're listening to this, whether that's on YouTube, whether that's on audio podcast, whatever platform you're in, that you can then present to that person. Be like, hey, by the way, these are my channels. Like you said, your value proposition. And this is the things that have been proven to be very successful with our platforms. Can we do something together there? And I think bringing it back down, because I see how it can be very exciting to look at the future and be like, hey, we have all these massive possibilities in the future, but we don't have those now, and then be very discouraged to go do the ask because we don't have those things ready. I promise you, and I'm talking to you listening, to you watching, you have a massive value today. If you look at the things that you are already doing, I'm sure you might be sending a weekly email. I'm sure you might be recording multiple things, or a summary, or like what are some creative ways that you, with the pieces that you have in place today, can collaborate. And I think that's key to taking action. Yeah,
I'm going to add, actually, I just wrote down a little list as my brother was going in his little rant right here, right? I wrote down a little list of things that you can potentially do. And I'm going to lead with saying, you know, you were talking about expectations. When I talked to my girlfriend, we've kind of like agreed on expectations are uncommunicated commitments. So have a conversation pre-recording where you set out those boundaries and those commitments, right? You say, all right, this is what we're going to do once the episode is ready. And here's a list of those things that you can potentially do. 1, drop an episode in their feed. You mentioned that one. That is a low friction. You're literally producing the episode and then you're just sending it to them and they drop it on their feed. Fun story. We actually had somebody that is in the lawn care industry. Fun fact that you mentioned that, right? He has a huge following. Like, he has so many sponsors, very, very successful podcast, and he literally just grabbed our episode and posted on his feed. We didn't ask him to. That's the funny thing. We didn't ask him to or anything. One day I started getting some followers and I was like, why are all these like people in the lawn industry following me, right? And then I see a story that the guy posted the episode. And I was like, wow, that is really cool. I wish I would have come up with that idea because I would have sent him the fully produced episode, because he ended up actually posting like the full recording. So like the super raw, like the pre-conversation that we had before the episode, the post-conversation. So it was kind of funny. Another thing on the list here, number 2, produce and share a trailer. Again, this one requires a little bit more resources, but if you have a team, guess what? You can do those. Produce and share clips as well. We used to do this at the very beginning of the podcast to build a lot of goodwill. But again, I think it's very important to not just produce the clips and send it to them with the expectation of them publishing it. It's important for you to commit, have a conversation pre-recording and tell them, hey, we're going to send you these clips after, are you open to sharing this, right? The day that this drops, and then get the yes from them. Number 3, if you have writers on your team, if they prefer writing content like a LinkedIn post, for example, you can tell them, hey, we'll write a promo post that then we can share it, and you just, kind of like change the hook in there. That takes a little bit of resources as well. My brother just mentioned email campaign mentions. If they already have a newsletter, takes nothing for them to just say, by the way, I just recorded an episode in Content is Profit. Go check it out. Here's the link. Takes very minimal effort. Also, they could do a call out on their next episode on their podcast, right? They can just say, hey guys, welcome to X, Y, and Z. By the way, go and check out my episode that I did with Content is Profit, right? So you're kind of getting a little bit of a call out in there. And last but not least, live content. Live content is absolutely amazing. It's actually one of the things that I put here on my 2024 kind of like upcoming things, which is live content. I think is going to be huge with the rise of AI. People want to know they're talking to the real person. And I think promotional live content is going to be great. You can agree before the episode on like, hey, look, this episode is going to drop in 2 weeks. The day it drops, let's jump on a little live content, right? And when you go live, it shares on their profile, you share on your profile, you share on everybody's profile, and you get more reach. So that's a little list. If you want it, just send us a message. Say, give me the list, and we'll share all this ones with you.
Thank you for repeating what we just said 10 minutes ago.
Yeah, exactly. I put it down in a nice, clean list. Look at that. People will appreciate it, okay?
Absolutely. I did.
Prime edutainment right here, roasting included.
I was just trying to find where you had the notes. I was like, where's he writing these? And you just had him up in the cheat sheet. But anyways, Carly, what are obviously, we talked obviously a lot about the platforms and collaborations. I can't wait to see what you guys do with your shows. We're obviously big fans of them, and we get so much value every single day. What are some of the things that you guys might be working on, or some trends that you guys are looking into, especially with this new year, right? It feels like in January, every single person, our phones have been like ringing nonstop. We're like, we want to set up a studio. We want to start recording. Like, when can we get in? And we're like, oh boy, like next week we have a full week event and we're actually closing the studio for going. We're like, no, where's time? But it's like everybody's jumping in this wagon, right? And so that's obviously exciting. And I want to make sure that everybody builds their systems to stay consistent. What are some things that you have seen in the industry or that you guys will try out this new year?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think going back to what I shared earlier, going really hard on earned media, I think the paid space has changed so much since, sort of the emergence of paid in the industry a couple of years ago. What I will say about consistency is, editorially, when we think about consistency, I think people tend to be like very ambitious. And so they're starting a show and they'll go, I want to go 5 days a week. And then they go 5 days a week and they go, oh, actually, this is not possible for what I have going on right now. And so I think being really honest with yourself of like listing out like, okay, what are my goals? What do I want to accomplish this year? And then looking at that list through the lens of what do I have the time for? What do I have the resources for? And what do I have the energy for? And then prioritizing those. And that might mean that a lot of those things on the list, you're not going to be able to get to this year or next year, or maybe until further down into the future, but really being honest with yourself about what is achievable, what can you do, and just doubling down on that. I think when we think about the growth stage, podcasting is really hard because it's a lot more of a slow burn than it is maybe on YouTube or on TikTok or on other places where the algorithm is so just crazy in the way that it works, and you can't see those massive ups and downs like you can on a YouTube channel, right? And so the biggest thing is being super consistent and figuring out what works for you. At HubSpot, we spend a lot of time experimenting and doing trials and doing A/B testing. And this is definitely something that we have leaned really heavily into in terms of the original shows, because we have launched so many of the shows very recently. And so while we, of course, want them to have explosive growth, we also are very closely tracking on the back end and are trying always to understand how is the audience that we want to reach different than the audience that we're reaching, and what does that mean for growth. So I think having more of a data informed decision making based on what you're actually seeing is super, super important. So that's kind of where we are. And I think as the shows continue to grow, thinking about how to expand the audience, what levers can we pull, right? Whether that's a mix of paid and earned and owned and all of those things, but also realizing like this is the capacity of our host. This is the capacity we have editorially. Like this is how comfortable we are like straying away and testing and just sort of building a strategy, kind of a top-down strategy in that way. We talked about this on the last episode, but I think having a cross-channel marketing strategy is really important. Cross-channel doesn't necessarily mean all channels. So we don't have social accounts for all of our original shows. And that's a very intentional choice because we know where our audiences are and want to build there. But we know that there might not be like a newsletter or an audience on our newsletters that's going to be a good fit for this content. And so we're not going to share that content there, and just trying really hard to be super intentional about that. So I think the overall arching theme is being intentional.
Yeah. By the way, super plug, we do have a training called the Publishing Pyramid. So if you want it, it's completely free. Just send us a DM. It actually helps you measure what Carly was just saying. And this was not planned at all. Like this is basically from experience that we've done it. So, measure your capacity, your message, your resources. Yeah. And it's going to give you a clue.
Carly, hide the script. Hide the script.
But it's super important because that's exactly what we experienced as creators when we first started, and we got burned out real fast. And then we finally found a platform and a cadence that we could follow, right? For us, it came in a time where, we lost all the business and we're like, let's do it 3 times a week, right?
Yep.
We still record 3 to 2 times a week, but it has become a little more challenging to be consistent with 3 times a week. So now we're like remeasuring, like how can we readapt? What other type of content can we create to keep consistency? And that's an interesting game, right? I feel also we talked a lot about the need of the creator of you need to enjoy also the process, right, of creating, of looking at this data or figure out, what your audience wants and provide them with those wins and be of service. Because if you don't enjoy it, what's the point? Like you're not going to be able to create something that other people are going to find receptive, or you're not going to be able to help them out. So I highly recommend, if it's not you in your company, find somebody that is. That way you guys can tackle this together.
Yeah, absolutely. This has been absolutely amazing. Carly, we're getting close to the end here, but I'm curious, what is your prediction for 2024? What are you seeing that is going to, take off, right? I share with you mine is the shows and series. I think that's going to be high entertainment value. That's going to be huge. And the live content. I'm curious, where are you seeing things going for this year?
Yes, absolutely. So on more of the creator side, I think that LinkedIn is going to continue to chart the path of becoming a platform for influencer marketing. I think this might be specifically maybe more in the B2B space, but we are seeing a larger uptick in creators having a very strong presence on LinkedIn and brands really wanting to do sponsored content there. And so I think this is going to be the year of like B2B influencer marketing on LinkedIn. And I'm curious to see how the platform will change and maybe move a little bit more towards sort of finding a way to facilitate sort of direct like brand to person relationships through the platform. So that's kind of more on the creator side. And on the podcasting side, I really think that it's like the new age of specialized and niche creators. That's kind of been happening for a little while, but we're seeing such an explosive growth in the size of overall podcast listeners. And because there's so many people out there in the sea of listeners, you can still become extremely successful because those niches just have so many people and there's so much potential. I want to give a shout out to Jay Klaus, who is an amazing niche creator who has had so much success in the growth of his show and of his YouTube channel by having a clear value to his audience and speaking directly to a target, and maybe is seen that could be seen, I think just the age of more of the generalist is over. And I think we're seeing that also more on like the influencer side, with brands like wanting to work with, niche creators for UGC or for brand partnerships because the engagement is so much more. And so I think the age of thinking of creators only as the biggest people at the top of the pyramid is really over. And now I think there's going to be a lot more focus on people more in the niche space and more micro creators in the future.
I love it.
Yeah, I'm writing here, thinking as creators of the top of the pyramid is over. That is right, guys. We are coming for you. I love it. I love those two predictions. The LinkedIn B2B influencer marketing and in podcasting specialized and niche down podcast, which actually goes hand in hand with what we talked with Jeremy Enns before the end of the year, right? We went over his whole research and he was talking how actually the best performing, the podcasts that see the most growth are those that are being very special, the ones that have an angle. And it actually made us consider and start talking about, all right, how do we maybe focus a little bit content is profit content, because we've done a lot of interviews and we do dive a little bit on the story, right? It's has a little bit of everything to satisfy everybody, right? But we want to be probably a little bit more niche down with content is profit. Yeah. I think with the name, we can really tackle kind of what we talk about today, right? What are those growth strategies that are actually going to drive profit into your business or growth for, the media effort that you're putting out there? So that I love those. And you did mention UGC a few times, and every single time that you mentioned it, this thought up in my head. So I'm going to share it for anybody who wants it. I was like, I've never seen UGC generated content for podcasters. Like, I haven't seen a podcaster actually being promoted, in somebody else's Instagram as a day in the life of, right? For example, let's say it's a software engineer that has some sort of micro following, and you tell him, hey, look, why don't we do some UGC kind of like ad for my podcast? And then he can create a video saying a day in the life of a software engineer. I wake up at 6 a.m, play my podcast, content is profit. You got to stay on top of how to grow your social media. And then he just goes, right? And it looks super organic. I was like, I wonder if that could actually work. So, I'm putting the thought out there for anybody that wants to execute it. Not sure if we will. But if you do execute on this idea, let us know. I would love to hear about the results.
Let me be clear. We're not executing not because it's not a good idea, because it is a great idea.
That's right.
But
That's right.
It's more on the capacity, because we went through our publishing pyramid training. And we're very clear on our capacity right now. It's on the list of things that we want to try. So,
you gotta learn how to say no. You gotta learn how to say no. So I'm putting it out in the universe.
Well, maybe what I'll propose to you is next time I come on for my residency, I can film a little day in the life or behind the scenes of being a guest on Content as Profit. We can push that out there, and then we can see what we're working with here.
Heck yeah, I love it.
It's gonna be a great footage of your cell phone receiving text from maybe like, Carly, I'm 5 minutes late. Carly, I'm 10 minutes behind. Carly, I'm stuck in traffic.
That's awesome. Yeah, we should totally do that. I think that'll be absolutely amazing. You see, another thing to add to the list of partnerships: record a day in the life of the day that you are going to be a guest on the podcast. Nice.
The jitters.
It's a great incentive. Great way to get people excited about being a guest when they see
the butterflies
what the behind the scenes looks like.
Yeah, exactly.
The preparation.
Right. How do I film my anxiety?
Yeah.
the day of some people will be like, oh, crap, I forgot that I have this podcast. Let me log on.
That'd be awesome. Can't wait to see and hear some results about this. But Carly, thank you so much. This has been absolutely amazing. Anything else you want to add before we head out?
I don't think so.
You crushed it as
That's
always.
it. Crushed it. We're gonna miss you at Podfest next week. Probably when this episode comes
I
out,
know.
that the event already passed. But yeah, thank you, Carly, again for coming in and dropping some golden boulders.
We'll see you in your next
Yeah.
residency event. I don't even know if it's
Sounds
called like
good.
that. I'm just making that up.
Guys, with that said, thank you so much for tuning into the Content Profit Podcast. Go ahead and follow the show in your favorite podcasting platform and on social media at Beast Bros Co.
That is Ranip Carly here. Help you move one step closer towards your goal. Please don't forget to share this episode and leave a 5-star review. And if you want, just make some UGC generated content for us. You know what I mean. All right, see you.
Bye, guys.